So, the previous experiment kind of showed how we can convincingly envision, or believe we envision, the world in our mind's eye, even if we aren't using our actual eyes. I now want us to think about something from living in the material world that Canadians should be very familiar with, a loonie coin. Think about it. You should be able to imagine it in the palm of your hand. Think carefully. Can you feel its cool weight? Can you see its color and luster? Can you see the bird on it? Can you see the word Canada embossed on it? Think about it as clearly as you can. In our memory, we can conjure up an absolutely convincing image of the coin. Keep thinking about it. Focus on the image. For that is what you are seeing in the palm of your hand, an image of the coin. Now, pause the video and draw what you are seeing. Take as long as you need. Draw it from memory. If you have a loonie in your pocket, do not reach down and pull it out for reference. Okay, here's what I managed. I think I've more or less got it, surely, for I can see the coin so clearly in my memory. And here is the real coin. In actual fact, my attempt is quite dismal. The difference is stark. Our memory, in fact, seems to have very little in the way of explicit information. It is not photographic. It is, in fact, very vague, although we have been able to convince ourselves we are seeing something very clearly. Memory seems to provide simple templates in an unexplicit manner. That is, the relationship of one component to another is not correct. My loon-like creature is backwards, facing the wrong direction. I know there is the word Canada on the coin and the word dollar, so I have written these words. I forgot it does not say $1, but rather just dollar. I have no recollection of the spacing on the word Canada. I just know it's there. I forgot about the water. I forgot about the island. I do not have photographic memory. In fact, psychologists generally think there is no such thing as a photographic memory. We remember notions, objects, words, numbers, not pixels. And this makes sense. Think of how much memory photographic images consume on your camera or computer. If we could remember photographically, our brains could not hold all the information required to do so. The basic notion of something stands in for extensive information. Here's my attempt at drawing the back of the coin with Her Majesty on it. And here's the actual back of the coin. Again, not a complete botch. I generally have the notions, but no photographic optical idea of what is there. Now look at this drawing. Done pretty well in the same amount of time as an observational drawing of the front side of the coin. And here is the flip side with Her Majesty. And here is a comparison of the drawings from memory and the observational drawing. Memory is obviously lacking. I found the same exercise online for an American dollar bill. Here it is from the memory of an artist, and here it is drawn observationally. Interesting that, like my own memory drawing, the face faces the wrong way, just like my loon and my queen. Here's a quick anecdote. When I was a student in life drawing class, we would do an exercise in which we would stare at the model in a pose for a couple of minutes. We had to stare intently and take the image in, and then, after a couple of minutes, the model would leave the pose, and we had to furiously try and draw it from memory before the memory faded. What a challenge that was. I was horrified. I simply could not remember what I had seen. I honestly thought there was something wrong with me at the time, that I lacked the photographic memory presumably required for someone aspiring to be an occupational artist. The instructor provided no clues or insight into the exercise or why we were doing it. It was a failed task for me. Now, can you think of a way of solving the problem? Years later, I did. By then, from practice, I had a clear internal model of the human form established in my memory. Not an ability to remember an individual, or a pose, but a general notion or template of what the human body looked like, to the extent that I could draw a basic, general, nude human being with approximate skeletal protuberances and muscular structure from memory. I could draw a basic schema, a diagram, so to speak. The way to solve the problem of the memory pose is not to try and remember the image of the pose, but rather to take the actual pose the model is in. Hold it with him or her for the duration of the pose. Now you will find you can actually retake the pose yourself. You will be able to assume the pose right down to the position of the fingers because you have stored the memory of it in your body, so to speak. Now, if you have a basic understanding of the human form, a schema, a notion of the structure developed from hundreds of hours of practice, or thousands of hours, you can draw the pose, if not the actual model, quite accurately by assuming the pose and projecting it onto a drawing on your paper. In today's world, we take pictures of people completely for granted, our loved ones, on the mantle, in photo albums, on Facebook, stored on our computer and on our cell phones. We can conjure them up by just looking at the photo of the person wherever it might be. This further convinces us that we can remember our loved ones' faces and persons accurately, and convinces us that we have a better visual memory than we actually have. But we can't, because we can't. Can you imagine what it must have been like before we had accurate portraiture of any kind? Would we still be able to convince ourselves after weeks, months, years, decades that we still knew what a loved one looked like from memory? Or would we realize how utterly we had lost them without a picture? If we did have a picture of our dear one, imagine how valuable it must have been to us. The picture of the soldier's sweetheart, creased and worn from wear in one of his pockets, and the picture of the soldier on the wall, or the desk, or mantle on the home front. Think of immigrants boarding boats and saying goodbye to friends and relatives and never ever seeing them again. How quickly their memories would fade to just abbreviations, notions, to match a name. Imagine if they have a picture of a dearly departed loved one to take with them. Imagine how much more real the memory becomes. Of course, there's more. If you've lost someone and they come back to you, regardless of your fuzzy memory, you might recognize them immediately. Recall is the problem, recognition far less so. And recognition also brings in such subtle factors as the gait of a person, which allows you to recognize someone long before you can confirm it is their face. Or there's also smell, which seems deeply associated with memory. If someone dear has departed, think of how weeks later you can sniff unwashed white items of their clothing, and the memory of them, not a photographic or optical memory, but something far deeper, comes rushing back. As an aside, as I understand it, many of the researchers finally trying to confront the notion of consciousness, either from the point of view of psychology or artificial intelligence and machine intelligence, have come from a background in the study of visual perception. I think anyone who has drawn intently and observationally for extensive tracts of their working life can't help but reflect on how little they see and how fabricated and inferred assumed vision actually is, and it does not take much to make the comparison to consciousness itself. It is as though vision and consciousness are parallel emergent qualities, assumed to exist as being far larger than the sum of their respective parts. As an artist, the reflection on these parallels can be seen as both frightening or liberating, or both, in terms of realizing how little there seems to be of our seeing, self-aware selves, regardless of how complex automatic and unconscious thought might be. This philosophical and meditative bent inherent to the act of drawing can provide the slightly unhinging fringe benefit of getting to know thyself.